The Galactic Ark. Chapter 1, Awakening Under a Dying Sun. The air crackled with heat. Sweat dripped from Kieran's brow, stinging his eyes as he frantically worked beneath the flickering lights of the engineering bay. Alarms blared, their urgent cries echoing through the labyrinthine corridors of the Ark. Outside, the artificial sun beat down with unrelenting fury, its radiation amplified by a critical malfunction in the ship's ancient life support systems. Kieran's hands flew across the control panel, his fingers dancing over worn buttons and flickering displays. He muttered calculations under his breath, ignoring the rising panic and the voices crackling over the comm system. Years of scavenging and tinkering in the cramped workshops of the lower decks had prepared him for this moment. Bypass coolant flow, reroute auxiliary power, engage emergency venting, he muttered, each command a desperate gamble. A spark, a hiss, then a blessed rush of cooler air. The alarm stuttered, then fell silent. Kieran collapsed onto a nearby crate, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Relief washed over him, quickly followed by a familiar bitterness. Another crisis averted, another day where the privileged few in the upper levels would barely notice the sweat and toil that kept them alive. Kieran grew up in the depths of the Ark, a world of dimly lit corridors and cramped living quarters, where generations of his family had toiled to maintain the ship's vital systems. His father, a gruff but kind-hearted mechanic, had instilled in him a love for machines and a healthy skepticism towards authority. "Remember, Kieran," his father would say, "the Ark may be our home, but it's also a prison. Never forget that." Those words echoed in Kieran's mind as he made his way to the command deck, summoned by the summons of Admiral Lysander. The upper levels were a stark contrast to the utilitarian world below. Polished floors, vaulted ceilings, and an air of effortless luxury. Lysander awaited him in a grand chamber overlooking the ship's vast central atrium. He was a towering figure, with a mane of silver hair and piercing blue eyes that radiated authority. Yet there was a flicker of doubt in those eyes, a hint of the burden he carried. "Kieran," he said, his voice deep and resonant, "your quick thinking saved us today. The Council owes you a debt of gratitude." Kieran nodded, but his words were laced with a thinly veiled sarcasm. "Glad to be of service, Admiral. Just doing my job as always." Lysander's lips twitched in a faint smile. "Indeed, but your methods, unorthodox, wouldn't you say?" "Unorthodox, but effective," Kieran retorted. "Sometimes the old ways need a little shaking up." A tense silence hung in the air. Then Lysander sighed, a hint of weariness in his voice. "Perhaps you're right, Kieran. Perhaps it's time for a change." As Kieran left the command deck, a sense of unease settled over him. He had earned the respect of the Admiral, but he knew that his defiance had also sown seeds of suspicion among the elite. The Ark was a powder keg, and Kieran had just struck the match. Chapter 2. Echoes of the Past. Kieran's promotion came with unexpected perks: access codes to restricted areas, clearance to browse confidential archives, and a quiet office overlooking the hydroponics bay. But he cared little for the trappings of power. What he truly craved was knowledge, the answers to the questions that had haunted him since childhood. The Ark's historical archives were a maze of digital corridors, filled with terabytes of data detailing centuries of life aboard the ship. Kieran sifted through the records, his eyes scanning for anomalies, inconsistencies, anything that might challenge the official narrative of their mission. He found them in unexpected places: gaps in the population records, censored entries in the engineering logs, cryptic messages buried deep within maintenance reports. He pieced together fragments of a hidden history, whispers of a rebellion quelled long ago, and whispers of something far more sinister lurking beneath the surface of their seemingly idyllic society. Kieran's discoveries fueled the whispers already circulating in the lower decks. In the cramped mess halls and dimly lit workshops, rumors spread like wildfire. The ship's elite, known as the Ascendants, were hiding something. The Ark wasn't what they said it was. Meanwhile, Admiral Lysander found solace in the solitude of his private quarters. The weight of his secret knowledge pressed down on him, a constant ache in his chest. He replayed the events leading up to Earth's demise, the desperate gamble to launch the Ark, and the sacrifices made to ensure humanity's survival. He had believed in the mission, in the righteousness of their cause. But as time went on, doubts crept into his mind. He saw the growing resentment in the eyes of the lower decks, the desperation of families struggling to survive on meager rations, the children born into a world they would never know. Is this the future we were promised? He asked himself, his voice barely a whisper. One night, as Lysander drifted to sleep, a nightmare seized him. He saw the flames engulfing Earth, the panicked crowds fighting for a spot on the Ark, the tearful goodbyes of loved ones left behind. The screams echoed in his ears, merging with the whispers of discontent that filled the ship. He woke with a start, his heart pounding in his chest. The darkness of his quarters seemed to press in on him, suffocating him. He reached for the comm panel, his fingers trembling. "Kieran," he said, his voice raspy with sleep, "I need to see you, immediately." Chapter 3. The Forbidden Archive. The stale, recycled air of the hidden archive hung heavy around Kieran as he stared at the glowing screen before him. He'd spent countless nights navigating the labyrinthine security protocols, peeling back layers of encryption like an onion, until finally he'd reached the core. The truth buried beneath centuries of carefully constructed lies. This can't be right," he murmured, his voice barely a whisper. The documents painted a chilling picture. The Ark wasn't a sanctuary, a beacon of hope carrying humanity's last survivors to a new dawn. It was a prison, a gilded cage built to contain those deemed unworthy of salvation. A genetic experiment gone wrong, a subspecies engineered for resilience and adaptability, but feared for their unnatural abilities. Anger surged through Kieran, hot and fierce. He thought of his family, his friends, all the countless generations who had toiled in the depths of the ship, their lives dictated by a lie. He thought of the ascendants, living in their opulent towers, oblivious to the truth of their ancestors' crimes. He couldn't keep this to himself. He had to tell someone. But who could he trust? He thought of Anya, his closest friend, a fiery medic with a rebellious streak. He thought of Deacon, the grizzled old mechanic who had always looked out for him. He thought of Ilara, the enigmatic historian who had hinted at hidden truths buried in the ship's past. Gathering his courage, Kieran sent out a coded message, a beacon in the digital darkness. He waited, his heart pounding in his chest, hoping that someone would hear his call. Hours later, they gathered in the shadows of the hydroponics bay, Kieran, Anya, Deacon, and Ilara. Their faces were etched with a mixture of shock, anger, and disbelief as Kieran revealed the truth. "We're prisoners," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Our ancestors were lied to, betrayed, and now we're trapped in this gilded cage, our lives controlled by those who fear us." "We won't stand for it," Anya declared, her eyes blazing with defiance. "We'll fight back. We'll expose the truth to everyone." Deacon nodded grimly. "We'll need a plan, a way to reach the others, to unite the lower decks." Ilara, ever the voice of reason, cautioned them. "We must be careful. The Ascendants won't give up their power easily. They'll fight to preserve their lives, even if it means our destruction." Meanwhile, in his private quarters, Lysander paced restlessly. He had received reports of Kieran's unauthorized access to the archives, and his gut told him that the young engineer had stumbled upon the truth. The weight of his family's legacy, the centuries of carefully guarded secrets, pressed down on him. He had always believed in the mission, in the necessity of their isolation. But now, faced with the stark reality of the Ark's true purpose, his convictions wavered. He thought of Kieran, of his unwavering determination and his belief in a better future. Could he truly condemn this young man and the countless others like him to a life of servitude and ignorance? Lysander sank into a chair, his head in his hands. He had a choice to make, a choice that would determine the fate of not just himself, but of all humanity aboard the Ark. Chapter 4. The Crucible of Revolt. The Ark lurched violently, throwing Kieran against a bulkhead. The lights flickered, casting long, ominous shadows across the corridor. The air throbbed with the rumble of explosions, the screams of the wounded, and the frantic chatter of comms channels. Rebellion had ignited. What started as hushed whispers in the depths of the ship had erupted into open war. The lower levels, once a labyrinth of quiet desperation, were now a seething cauldron of defiance. Kieran could hear the metallic clang of makeshift weapons, the rhythmic thud of boots on metal grating, and the defiant chants of the oppressed rising in unison. Kieran and his allies found themselves in the heart of the storm, leading a ragtag band of rebels against a well-armed and disciplined security force. They fought with the fury of those who had nothing left to lose, their bodies fueled by anger and adrenaline. Anya, her medical kit strapped to her back, darted between the lines, patching up the wounded and shouting encouragement. Deacon, armed with a jury-rigged energy rifle, held a choke point with grim determination, his weathered face set in a mask of defiance. But the tide was turning against them. The Ascendants, though outnumbered, were better equipped and organized. Their sleek armor and advanced weaponry outmatched the rebels' improvised arsenal. Kieran knew they couldn't win a war of attrition. They needed a decisive blow, a way to cripple the Ascendants' power and force them to the negotiating table. Then a chilling message blared over the ship-wide comms. It was Lysander's voice, cold and resolute. "Attention all crew, this is Admiral Lysander. The rebellion has jeopardized the mission and the future of humanity. As a last resort, I have activated the Ark's self-destruct sequence. You have 1 hour to surrender and return to your designated areas. Failure to comply will result in the termination of all life aboard this vessel." Panic rippled through the rebel ranks. Kieran's heart sank. This wasn't a bluff. Lysander was desperate, willing to sacrifice everything to maintain order. But Kieran refused to give up. He knew there had to be a way to stop the countdown, to save his people from annihilation. He turned to Anya, his voice barely audible above the din of battle. "I need to get to the central core. Can you hold them off?" Anya's eyes met his, a fierce determination burning in their depths. "Go," she said. "We'll buy you time." Kieran nodded, a silent understanding passing between them. He turned and sprinted deeper into the heart of the ship, his mind racing, his every step a desperate gamble against time. He knew that the fate of humanity rested on his shoulders, and he would not fail them. Chapter 5. The Architect's Awakening. The hidden chamber pulsed with an ethereal glow, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Kieran stood in awe, his breath caught in his throat. He had stumbled upon a sanctuary untouched by time, a place where the very air seemed to hum with ancient wisdom. Smooth obsidian walls curved around him, etched with intricate symbols and patterns that seemed to shift and shimmer as he moved. A central pedestal, crafted from an unknown material that glowed with an inner light, held a collection of artifacts unlike anything he had ever seen. There were crystalline orbs that pulsed with energy, metallic discs etched with constellations, and strange organic devices that seemed to breathe with a life of their own. But it was the central console, a shimmering interface of light and sound, that drew Kieran's attention. Hesitantly, he reached out and touched the console, his fingers tracing the glowing symbols. A surge of energy flowed through him, filling his mind with images, sounds, and sensations, the echoes of a forgotten past. He saw a vibrant, thriving Earth, a planet teeming with life and brimming with potential. He saw a benevolent race of beings, the architects, who had watched over humanity, guiding their evolution and nurturing their growth. He saw the Ark, a testament to their belief in humanity's potential, a vessel designed to carry them through the darkest of times. But he also saw the greed, the ambition, the fear that had driven humanity to the brink of self-destruction. He saw the architects' sorrow as they were forced to leave, their hopes for humanity fading as they watched from afar. Kieran pulled his hand away, his head reeling from the onslaught of information. But the message was clear. Humanity was not meant to be prisoners. They were meant to be explorers, creators, architects of their own destiny. Meanwhile, in the heart of the chaos, Lysander found himself surrounded by loyalists, their faces grim and determined. The self-destruct countdown ticked down relentlessly, a constant reminder of his impending failure. But as he looked out at the faces of his people, he saw not just fear and anger, but also courage, resilience, and a fierce determination to survive. He saw the same spark that had driven Kieran to uncover the truth, the same spirit that had fueled the rebellion. And for the first time in his life, Lysander questioned his beliefs. Was he truly protecting humanity, or was he perpetuating a cycle of oppression and fear? Were the rebels truly the enemy, or were they the catalyst for change, the spark that could ignite a new era for their people? Lysander's resolve wavered. He could feel a change stirring within him, a shift in his perception, a realization that the true strength of humanity lay not in conformity, but in diversity, in the freedom to explore, to create, to evolve. Chapter 6, Legacy's End, A New Beginning. A hush fell over the gathered crowd as Kieran stepped onto the makeshift stage, the hum of the architect's technology thrumming beneath their feet. Before him, a sea of faces, etched with worry, hope, and a flicker of newfound unity. The rebellion had taken its toll, leaving scars on both the ship and its people. But amidst the rubble and the grief, a fragile alliance had formed. Today we stand on the precipice of a new era, Kieran began, his voice clear and resonant. For centuries, we have been divided, pitted against each other by lies and fear. But now we face a common enemy, a threat that transcends our differences and calls upon our shared humanity. He gestured towards the central console, the heart of the architect's legacy, its lights pulsing with an almost rhythmic energy. This technology, he continued, offers us not just salvation, but a chance to rebuild, to forge a society based on unity, equality, and the pursuit of knowledge. A society where every voice is heard, every life valued, and every dream nurtured. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Lysander, standing beside Kieran, his uniform disheveled and his face etched with regret, nodded solemnly. "I have made mistakes," he confessed, his voice barely audible. "I have been blind to the suffering of my people, clinging to a flawed legacy that brought us to the brink of destruction. But today I choose a different path. I choose unity. I choose hope." His words were met with a stunned silence, then a wave of cheers and applause. The barrier between the ascendants and the lower decks, once seemingly impenetrable, began to crumble. Together they worked tirelessly, pooling their knowledge and skills. Engineers from the lower decks collaborated with scientists from the upper levels, former rivals now united in a common cause. They deciphered the architect's intricate designs, harnessed the ship's latent energy reserves, and repaired the damaged systems. As the countdown approached zero, tension crackled in the air. But when the final moment arrived, there was no explosion, no cataclysm. Instead, a wave of energy washed over the Ark, a gentle hum that seemed to resonate with the very soul of the ship. The lights flickered, then brightened, revealing a transformed vessel. The air scrubbers worked with renewed vigor, the hydroponics bays burst with life, and the long-dormant communication array sprang to life, sending a signal of hope into the cosmos. The Ark was no longer a prison. It was a vessel of transformation, a beacon of unity, a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity. With a newfound sense of purpose, they charted a course for a new world, a planet teeming with life and promise. As they left behind the wreckage of their past, a message from the architects echoed through the ship, a message of hope and encouragement. "You have endured, you have learned, you have evolved. Go forth and build a future worthy of your potential. The universe awaits you."